Hi everyone, my name is Viola Allo, and the title of my presentation is Internet Yogis Free Online Classes as Open Pedagogy, Social Media Platforms as Instructional Tools for a Global Yoga Information Community. This presentation is based on my final paper for the Info 281 Globalization Seminar. My presentation includes an introduction, background, definitions, discussion, summary, the significance of my project, and my list of references. Let's begin with a short introduction to my topic. Yoga is a great example of globalization. This once traditional practice from India now has over 300 million practitioners worldwide. The globalization of yoga in the 21st century is facilitated by the internet. My project focuses on free online yoga classes, and I argue that these are a form of open pedagogy. I look at social media platforms, particularly Instagram and YouTube, and the work of internet yogis, yoga instructors who use social media to provide open access to yoga instruction. This can be in the form of lectures, discussions, tutorials, and free yoga classes. I look at their content in video format. I argue that they provide an online learning environment and virtual therapeutic landscape that supports a global yoga information community. They also model accessible learning that has important lessons for the LIS field. Just a quick introduction on the background of how yoga globalized. This practice originated in India about 3,000 years ago. The word yoga means the union or underlying unity of all things, and it comes from the Sanskrit root yuj. Modern yoga is seen as a product of globalization. Many scholars cite Swami Vivekananda, an early yoga leader, to be the person who launched the globalization of yoga by giving an inspiring speech at the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. Other scholars date the globalization of yoga much earlier, to the late 1700s, early 1800s, during the British colonial era in India. Mission presses like the Serampore Mission Press near Calcutta were very active in translating indigenous texts from Sanskrit to English. The work of indigenous scholars called Pandits was very critical as they translated texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali from Sanskrit to English. Once these texts were available in English, it opened up the practice of yoga to a Western and a global audience. Traditionally, yoga was viewed as a set of techniques and a body of knowledge for spiritual enlightenment. Modern yoga is seen as a physical and mental practice for meditation and a lifestyle that supports fitness and relaxation. However we view yoga, it is an embodied practice that is experienced through the body, through the movement of the body and the stilling or stillness of the body. The practice is very inclusive and open to all participants, regardless of their background. And this supports the global diffusion of the practice. This also encourages open pedagogy or open educational practices for yoga instruction, especially online, as instructors can explore and experiment in how they would like to share the practice. Let's look at some definitions for open pedagogy. This is still an emerging field. It's very new. It's often defined as teaching that uses open technologies or open educational resources. However, definitions are kept broad because the practice includes a lot of informal learning. Bronwyn Hegarty provides a list of 8 attributes that indicate open pedagogy. And you can see from the list that open pedagogy is a form of instruction that really supports egalitarianism in the space of the classroom, participation, innovation, sharing resources and ideas. And that really just facilitates students and teachers to meet each other in a space of equality. Let's take a look at my discussion and analysis. I look at internet yogis and their online classes. I reviewed about 20 hours of video content, probably a little bit more than this, about 4 hours per yogi. And I focused on their classes because I wanted to make sure the content I was reviewing was instructional and pedagogical. versus content that is promotional or commercial. You can see a list of the yogis that I considered here, and they all have significant followings on Instagram and or on YouTube. This content is open in the sense that it's free or zero cost, except for the cost of internet access and, of course, the use of a device to access these classes. The content can be very self-directed for students. They can use it in any way that they like, whenever they like. There's no restriction on how they use it. Open technologies are used, so these are social media tools and different facets of these tools, such as live broadcasting for Instagram. Instructors can access these open technologies at little or no cost, and this allows the instructor to also share information for free. So the cost is kept low for instructors and for students. So a few more other facets that I considered when evaluating if their online free classes are open pedagogy. First, there is constant access to this content. It's available all the time online to anyone, anywhere in the world, as long as they have internet access and a device to review or stream this content. There are exceptions for 24-hour videos on Instagram, but a lot of instructors will make extra recordings or save those live videos and share them on their archive on Instagram through IGTV or through their YouTube channels. And this allows a more permanent level of access to this content. They can meet students wherever and whenever is convenient for the student, and there's no restriction in how students or when students make use of this content. This content is student-centered, and a lot of the instructors are very interested in gathering feedback. They invite comments, messages, sometimes live while the class is going on. Sometimes before they actually design and offer the class, they'll ask for feedback by taking a survey or a poll on their Instagram stories, and just asking students to please message them and let them know what they would like to learn. This makes the classes very non-didactic, very collaborative in the sense that teachers and students work together in shaping what the course is about. This allows internet yogis to stay in touch with what their students need. There is a high level of transparency in the way internet yogis teach these free online classes. They share not just how they select their content or themes, but also how they choose or develop their teaching styles. They might share their background, their experience, and what led them to teach in the way that they do. Marisha Do is a great example. She often explains to students how she became an instructor who is very observant about the unique abilities of each student, and also why she teaches in a manner that is very receptive rather than directive. Instructors might share how they build their yoga business, what kinds of equipment they use, their motivations for sharing certain kinds of content, whether they are doing so to earn an income or they are doing so to build community. They also are very self-reflective, very honest, very vulnerable. This is a core part of how they teach, and I argue that this transparency is a great sign that their work is open pedagogy. Another facet of their work that makes it open is that they create an archive of videos. These classes are shared, and there's hundreds of them. There are more being added daily and weekly, and they are on YouTube, on their channels. They are on their archives on Instagram. Students can access these at any time. And I argue that these are open educational resources. Some scholars might say they aren't because they can't be revised or remixed per se, but I argue that they can be reused, redistributed, and critiqued or reviewed by a global audience of yoga scholars of different levels of expertise, making them wonderful open educational resources. There is the opportunity to correct information, to share updated information, to make sure that misinformation is is clarified, and that students have access to information that allows them to be safe and effective in their yoga practice. This archive supports informal learning and lifelong learning, and is just very valuable for creating more opportunities for yoga education. Finally, a quality that makes these free online classes open pedagogy is the fact that they are inclusive. All students are welcomed, all levels of ability, all body types are celebrated. Instructors are very open about their own flaws and imperfections and struggles. There's a lot of vulnerability and honesty in how they teach. We get to see the behind the scenes and get to see that life is messy, the yoga practice is messy, there is no perfection, and a lot of students need this reassurance so that they can understand that they are good enough as they are, and they do not need to give up in their practice or feel that they cannot learn. They are welcomed to the process of learning, and this empowers them to explore their potential, to enjoy the process. It removes the fear of judgment, and reduces the fear of failure. So just a few photos of the online archives of some of these yogis so that you can see what they look like. These are the Instagram archives of Marisha Do and Kino McGregor. So just a lot of different tutorials and classes shared there in video format. And here's a photo of Bryony Smith offering a poll to her followers to see what they would like her to teach in an upcoming class or workshop. And you can see the results of the poll right there and then. Students can vote and see what she will be covering in the next class. And then there's a photo of a student taking a class from the comfort of her living room. She's taking a class offered by Kino McGregor. Here's a photo of Adrian Mischler's YouTube channel and a photo of Kino's YouTube channel. Just a summary of my discussion. I consider all the qualities discussed as evidence that the work of these internet yogis is open pedagogy. Some instructors argue that it's impossible to teach yoga online without an in-person interaction or without a teacher being physically present in the room with the student, and that it's actually dangerous to practice in this way. But I would argue that these online instructors have a lot of knowledge, expertise, and experience, and they have a positive impact on the learning of their students and followers, and these students' overall educational experience. You can see this in the feedback that the students give during the class and afterwards. They share so much appreciation and enjoyment from being able to participate in these open and free classes. Students do find this openness valuable, and this is even the case in academic settings, not just in the online sphere of internet yogis. Just the significance of my project. I see this project as very valuable for the LIS field because there's an impetus for us to create LIS environments that are open. We need to decolonize these spaces and make them much more egalitarian and participatory for our community members. We want to be able to practice being self-reflective, being vulnerable, being open, and meeting our community members and serving them in more egalitarian ways. We can also practice being ready to use online tools for instruction or for information sharing. We can see this right now in the COVID-19 pandemic, where our physical library spaces are closed and we have to shift more of our services into the online space. So we need to be ready to use these tools to meet our community members. We can share information, build archives of our content that is always accessible to community members. It's there for them wherever they are and whenever they need it. And we can also learn to be more transparent, to build trust and inclusion in how we share information, supporting communication and community engagement for our students or community members. So that concludes my presentation. Here's a list of references. Thank you so much for listening.